into your school lunches and breakfasts, and we're working really hard on that. And I also build gardens around the district and lead a lot of lessons around farm to school. So getting into the gardens, planting, all that cool stuff. And I'm hoping to get a garden here at Oneida really soon that you guys can work in and run and do all kinds of cool things with. I'm really honored and proud to be able to introduce you to farmer Will Allen. So Will Allen, at one point a professional basketball player, later became a farmer. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he created a huge urban farm. So all that means is that he created a farm that fed thousands of people in the middle of a city, just like here in Schenectady. All right, I'm really honored to bring him. He had an amazing farm where he did a lot of stuff that is great not only for getting fresh food to people. He worked with a lot of kids your age, training them in how to grow their own food, how to eat healthy. He worked with First Lady Michelle Obama on her Let's Move initiative. He's part of the Clinton Global Initiative. He's also a MacArthur Genius Grant winner. You can ask your faculty, your teachers what that means, but it's a huge, big deal. He's a James Beard Award winner. He's full of honors. He loves kids. He's passionate about getting access to food and creating equity in food systems, which is very important, not just here in Schenectady, but throughout our country. So can you give him a big round of applause?
Okay.
Just go
This is...
advance. This will go forward and this will go back.
Okay, great.
Simple.
You don't mind if I sit down, do you?
Oh, no. You
Okay.
sit down. That means the microphone, I won't have to raise it up more.
No.
Can you
All right,
take
I'll
it up?
just take it out.
There you go.
Well, good morning. Okay. It's great to be here with you all this morning. Tell you a little bit about myself. I actually grew up on a farm. I'm part of a family that's been farming for over 400 straight years. I'm part Native American, African American, but my family started farming many, many years ago, and it's been a continual process. We came from South Carolina and part of the Chickasaw tribe. Food was very important to us, not only to feed ourselves, but to feed the community. So that's something that my family has always done. So when I was growing up, both sides of my family, my mother's side, my father's side, that migrated from the South, and I hope you read my books someday, because it really tells a story of, it could be anybody's story, of folks that have moved from farming community into cities and continued to try to live the lifestyle in terms of food, because food is the most important thing in our lives. As I look around the world, and I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, I was thinking recently, since the war in Ukraine started, I was in Ukraine quite a few years ago, and it was always noted as a breadbasket of Europe, but now it's a situation where people have no food. They're trying to survive. So that's why I say food is the most important thing. And as we look at our cities around the country where we have so many problems, one of the things is food shortages, and it's not an equitable food system. Not everybody has access to good food, and it's really important to have good food, to be able to eat good food, because it really is important on how long you're going to survive based on the food that you put in your system. So one of the things I always tell groups like, and you guys are at this age where you're starting to make a lot of decisions for yourselves, and it's important for you to make good decisions, as you're probably told by your parents, guardians, teachers, and so forth. So I'm not going to preach a lot to you guys today. I just want to be able to show you a few images of the food system that we created in Milwaukee that's spread across the country and really around the world. To be able to grow food in small spaces, to be able to feed the community. So I hope you all, if I achieve anything today, I hope you all will reach a point where you say, I maybe want to try this, because I think it's important for us to grow food in our backyards, side yards, front yards, because of the food situation. I don't know if you all go shopping with your parents or you go shopping by yourself, but the price of food today is just ridiculous. So, it's important for us to grow a percentage of your food. It's not, I'm not going to say you're going to grow 100% of your food, but if you can grow, say, 10% of your food, that's a big deal. So what I do is I go around the country and I teach people how to start farms, how to grow food. So let's get started. I'm going to have to move over here so I can see the screen a little bit as we move forward on the slideshow. I hate to turn my back to you guys, but let's see. All right, this is good. Let's see if this works. Is this?
There you go. It's the down button.
Which one?
This one, sir.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay, these are some young people about your age. Some of the original kids I work with. These kids now are, I would say, in their mid-30s. And one of the things that we did was we would have the kids work on their projects and then come and write about their projects, and that really helped improve their writing skills and their recall on what they're doing. And these are some visitors that are looking at some aquaponics. And this is our farm. It's a 2-acre farm in the city of Milwaukee, and you can see the old greenhouses. I bought this in 1993. And these A-frame greenhouses in front were built in the late 1920s. And then we added some hoop houses. So that's what it looks like. One of the things that we did many years ago is added renewable energy. You can see the solar panels in front of one of the old A-frame greenhouses, and we had hot water panels about midway of the structure. But we grew enough food on that farm to feed 10,000 people in 2 acres. So this is really intensive agriculture that we were aiming for, to be able to grow a lot of food in a small space, because as you look around Schenectady, it's a city, but there's a lot of asphalt, concrete buildings, but there's also some vacant land around schools, around businesses that may have shut down, and you're able to grow food, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, this is another farm that I built. This is right on the edge of Milwaukee. It's a 30-acre farm. It has about 36 of these greenhouses, we call them hoop houses, and we were able to grow year-round using a renewable energy concept of using wood chip and brewery waste to heat those greenhouses. We would put it in the four corners of the greenhouses, and 160-degree temperature would come off of those piles, and we're able to grow certain crops throughout the winter. Oops. Having trouble with this. That one? Oh, okay. All right, these are the solar panels, and this helped us with our energy costs. Our energy costs were tremendous, of course, and we were able to provide about a quarter of our electric energy from these solar panels. So that's important, and a lot of people are talking about electric cars and solar, and we were kind of way ahead of that some 20 years ago. Oops. One of the things that we were able to do, because we had this wonderful farm in the city, was to tour people. To really, I would do a tour every day. And I would show people all the different things we were doing on the farm, even though it was winter time. And I know you guys have pretty severe winters up here. Well, we do in Milwaukee as well, but we're able to grow year-round and had animals and so forth, so it was just a great place that we could tour people. And you can see the houses in the background. You can see that we're right in the city here. We even had people come in from large companies like Walmart who wanted to learn more about urban agriculture because they had heard about what we were doing and they were thinking about purchasing food for their stores. Probably have you click it. Okay.
Do it, no problem.
Okay, the other thing we did, a lot of workshops training people. And this particular workshop, we're teaching people how to grow mushrooms. Now, if you eat mushrooms, they're very good for your health. A lot of physicians say that mushrooms help in terms of preventing cancer and treatment of other things. Next. These are oyster mushrooms. They take about 3 weeks after you go through the process of mixing the mycelium with the straw. You get these wonderful mushrooms about 3 weeks later. And they taste great. This is probably the most important thing in farming, which you see right here. This is taking the food waste. If you think about what you guys do every day, you eat lunch and everything, and the waste, what you don't eat, you can take that food waste and turn it into soil. It came from Mother Earth, and the main thing is we want to put it back into Mother Earth. It's a very sustainable thing to do. So one of the things we would do is teach young people how to do this. Next. Next. And then we use these pallet configurations, these 4 pallets that makes a yard of compost, and we put layers of what we call carbon, which is wood chip and newspaper and cardboard and food waste and layers, and fill this bin, and 4 months later it's back to soil. And then we take that soil and we would build beds and grow our food. And that's what it would look like. Next. So these are some of the partners. To do this, you can't do it in a vacuum. You have to do it with gaining partners. So we had partners like Altera Coffee, who would provide the coffee grinds. That's part of the nitrogen that goes into the recipe. Next. And brewery. Milwaukee is known as a brewery city. We have so many breweries in Milwaukee. We have Miller, we have all these microbreweries, so we're able to take brewery grains and use them. That's probably the most important piece of making compost, because those brewery grains have a lot of micronutrients in them. Next. And wood chip. Whenever you have a storm, I mean, storms are terrible, but one good result of storms is all the limbs that fall are ground up into wood chip, and you're able to use that wood chip to make compost. It came from Mother Earth, those trees, and now we're going to reuse it and grow other things to benefit our communities. Next. And fruits and vegetables. These are all fruits and vegetables from large companies that over-order. They don't order the right way, so they have leftover fruits and vegetables, and we would go out and get those to add to our recipe. Next. Next. Next, are we going? Oops, we're going backwards. Okay, this is finished compost. That's what it looks like when it's finished, 4 months later. It turns back into soil. Next. And we not only did, four-yard configurations, but we did thousands of yards of this compost to be able to grow all the food that we were growing on our farms. Next. We even had worm systems inside hoop houses in the wintertime to keep the worms warm so they would reproduce. Eventually, we started out with a youth project with about 40 pounds of worms, and we wound up with 7,000 pounds of worms. Next. And these are the worms. These are red worms. You've probably seen those, some of you, in worm bins, or you see them outside. And these worms break down the compost. Actually, what a worm does, they take in food, and as the food travels through their bodies, they multiply the microorganisms. And when the worm casting comes out, as you kids call worm poop, it increases by, say, sometimes 200,000 microbes. So that's how important worms are. So try not to step on worms. They're very important. And there they are doing their thing. And they multiply every 4 months. The worms will increase by 4 times their number. So they really multiply fast. Okay. Now I think one of those pictures of me holding the worms was in the New York Times a few years back. And then I would teach kids who were reluctant to hold worms a lot of times, but after a while they really liked getting involved and holding the worms. And then we would get the worms out of their boxes by using a screen technique that can actually pass through a window screen. So, if you have old window screen at home and you want to build a worm bin and you want to get them out, you put a window screen over the box, and then you put food on top, and they crawl through to get to their next food, and that's how you can remove them. And then we sold the worm fertilizer to help sustain our organization. My daughter, who's an artist and runs a farm in Chicago, she came up with this graphic here of looks like a male and a female worms, but worms are all the same sex, so there's really no difference, but this is kind of a funny thing. And then we would sift the castings. Next. And this is what it would look like. Now you can take that material and put it in your garden as a natural fertilizer. It's the world's best fertilizer. Next. And you can take it and make it into a tea. Instead of spraying chemicals on your crops or your lawns, you can use this as a fertilizer. Okay, this is where we get into our real city work. We would build hoop houses to be able to grow year-round. Can you go back to that one? Okay, where that young man is standing, that's asphalt. So we would put 12 inches of wood chip down and 2 feet of compost, and now we have a garden. Next. And we would build these beds inside hoop houses. Next. And in between the hoop houses. And then we started a project called Aquaculture. It was really aquaponics. It's growing fish and food in the same system. Next. Next. And you can see here, those are two 10,000-gallon aquaponics systems that can grow 20,000 fish. Tilapia at the time we were growing. And the important thing about this is many of our fish, I don't know what the water conditions in your rivers are here in your town, but most rivers and lakes and the oceans, the water's polluted. We've got to clean that up. But here you've created an artificial system that works just like a natural river or stream, where the water passes through the plants that you see on the beds on top, and the fish are down below, and it just recirculates the same water over and over. Next. And you can grow just about any kind of plant in those systems. So these are systems, a system I invented many years ago that's being used all over the world. As a matter of fact, I have a student in Africa who is using this system to grow tilapia. Next. 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 So this was the fish that we grew. Now we're harvesting those fish to be able to put into the marketplace. That's what a tilapia looks like. Next. 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 And we also grow the fish that's most important in Wisconsin. It's called lake perch. That's the favorite fish of Wisconsinites. As a matter of fact, right now during Lent, they can't get enough of those. If I took this group of you guys and we raised 1 million pounds of fish, we could sell it. Overnight, we could sell 1 million pounds because our lakes have become polluted, and they used to be in Lake Michigan and Lake Erie and other Great Lakes, and now there's hardly any there. So the only way to get that fish is to grow it in these systems. Next. 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 That fish, if you can go back one, that fish is called a black pacu. That's a fish that they get up to like 25 pounds. They're Brazilian fish that have teeth like humans that you find in the Nile, and you find them in Brazil. Those are, if you go back, those are the fillets from those lake perch. That's what they fry for fish fries. And we were able to do that. We would harvest the fish, then we would fillet them, and then we'd get them to the marketplace. Next. I work with the School of Freshwater Science at UW-Milwaukee, the Great Lakes Institute, and those are lake perch. These are brood stock to be able to grow the baby fish. Next. Next. Now this is the professor I work with. He's a world-renowned person who knows how to do this. Next. He would squeeze the eggs out of the fish. It's called an egg strand. It's about a yard long. It houses some 40,000 offspring. Next. Okay, hold it right there. Okay, next. Next. That's how long it is, and that's 40,000 offspring in that egg strand. Next. And then he would reach into the tank and grab a male fish. Now, the only way to do this is you got to know the male from a female, because the eggs have to be fertilized. So he would squeeze the sperm out of the male fish into the egg strand, and now they're fertilized. Next. Next. And then he would mix it with his hands. Next. Now, I learned how to do this as well, so I know how to do it. If anybody wants to learn how to do it, I can teach you. All right, next. Next. And then after we get them fertilized, we put them on a grate inside of a tank. And 12 days later, they hatch out. Now this is a system, oops, next. This is a system that we built to grow the lake perch. We did a project with the university, and we built this system. This is similar to our other systems. Next. 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 And that's what the system looked like. Now this is a very inexpensive system compared to many commercial systems that you'll see elsewhere. And the important thing about that is you want to create a system that the community can afford. It didn't make any sense for me to come up with systems that folks in the community couldn't afford to build. Organizations and schools and so forth. Next. One of the natural foods that I came up with, and you all have seen these, but you don't know what they are if you saw them. But we wanted to come up with, instead of feeding them a commercial food, we wanted to grow something to feed the fish. And what we did was we grew these black soldier fly larvae to feed our fish and our chickens. Next. That's what they look like. Now, it's important to be able to grow food year-round. So one of the things we did was we mixed brewery waste with wood chip and put it around the exterior of our hoop houses. Next. And it created that 160-degree temperature that we needed to keep those greenhouses warm in the wintertime. Next. 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 And you can see, if you look closely, you can see in the four corners piles of compost. That's wood chip and brewery waste mixed together to be able to keep the greenhouses warm. And that's a pretty simple thing to do, but it takes a lot of manpower, woman power, to mix those piles and then take a wheelbarrow and move them into the corners. It takes about a yard of compost per the 4 corners in a greenhouse. And you can see how we built the beds. They're 36 inches wide, 24 inches tall to be able to grow the food. Next. And that's the kind of intensive production that you want to get. You want to grow very intensive, and to be able to do that, you have to have a lot of fertility in your soil. So the important thing is to have a lot of fertility in your soil. Have good soil. It's all about the soil. That's salad mix. Those are some turnip greens, mustard greens. Next. That's my grandson with me. Next. These pictures are a bit dated. He just turned 14 the other day. And then in the wintertime, we would cover with plastic at night and open it up during the day inside the greenhouse. So you had the hoop house itself, you had the piles of compost in the 4 corners, and now you have plastic over the beds. And this is the kind of, again, intensive production. This is kale, one of the healthiest things that you can possibly eat. Next. We also had farms outside. This is where we grew 800,000 pounds of carrots. Carrots are very good for us, and we're able to grow carrots naturally without chemicals. And these carrots went to the school systems. And one day we would sell 30,000 pounds for the 600,000 students in the Chicago public school system. Water catchment. It's very important to capture water and not to use the city water. So we built these water catchment systems where the water, when it rained, the water would come off the greenhouses and go into a catchment system, and then we would pump it out onto our plants. And then we could grow fish in those catchment systems as well outside in the summertime. Next. 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 We also had goats on the farm. We had about 60 goats, and each year they would give birth, and we'd have all kinds of baby goats. So that was the original goat that we had, and that goat was in Money magazine. It was sitting on my lap as a very small goat, and it wound up being this really big, kind of mean male goat. Okay, next. But we had very good-looking goats, so a lot of tours. We did so many school tours, and the kids that was one of the favorite things, that the goats, because they were very mild and they wouldn't bite. They have recessed teeth. If you've ever been around goats, they don't actually bite you like other animals. They have recessed teeth, so they grab your clothes or something like that. And then we would milk the goats and make cheese. We had a creamery in Milwaukee that wanted the goat's milk to make feta cheese and other cheeses. And then we had 600 chickens there to lay eggs, brown eggs. And then we had 18 beehives, because honey is very good for us. Again, everything that we did on this farm was very strategic in terms of food that was healthy for you. And I'm sure you all are going to have beehives at your schools someday, if you don't already have them. And that's what we would teach also, our mini workshops. We had people from all over the world that would come to Growing Power to learn how to do these. Everything that you've seen so far, people would come and learn how to do. How to build beehives, how to extract the honey. And this is Chicago. If you ever go to Chicago, you see Grant Park. They are Chicago operation. We had operations in Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin, and this was in Grant Park. It was called a French potager type garden that thousands of people would walk through the park and see. And a lot of times they thought it was flower garden they were looking at, but it was vegetables. And the youth in our program took care of this farm. We brought the compost because Chicago at the time didn't have a lot of compost from Milwaukee. And I would drive it down and I would dump it and we would build these wonderful gardens in Chicago. Next. And this is part of the 800,000 pounds of carrots. This was 30,000 pounds in one day. This was a one-day consumption. And I had the opportunity to go down and talk to school kids just like you guys about this project. And these are the kids in the Chicago, at one of the schools in Chicago. And if you go back to that, image right there, everything on that plate, except for the milk, is probably not real healthy food. The only thing that's healthy on that plate is the milk and the carrots, because they were organic carrots. Next.